like I can hear every one of the 110 rounds pumped into the club from an assault rifle. A man fueled by hate charged into Orlando's Pulse nightclub and opened fire that morning, murdering 49 mostly LGBTQ people of color. Among them were my best friends, Drew and Juan, who suffered 19 gunshot wounds. They never made it home to say goodbye. Those 49 people, my best friends, our stolen loved ones, they're not just numbers or statistics. They're missing faces at birthday parties. They're empty seats at dinner tables. They are the human cost of hate violence. Listen, rejecting extremism, combating violence, those things are not partisan issues. They're American issues. I have seen the power of hatred. It ripped my entire community apart, stole those I loved the most, and quite frankly, it still haunts me today. That's why I can say with confidence that we must combat hate and do everything in our power to push back against it. We must draw inspiration from today's summit to ask ourselves, how will we make our country better, safer, and freer from hate's grip? We have to decide today that we will no longer stand on the sideline. I'll be honest, it's going to take every single one of us to make good on our promise of creating a more perfect union. And that's why I am so honored to be working alongside each and every one of you toward a world, a country that we can all be proud of. And it's an honor to be in partnership with an administration who really understands the value of our voices and the importance of our stories. We are really lucky to have the leadership of our vice president. She is someone who has spent her entire career fighting for justice for survivors of violence and fighting to put a stop to hate-based violence. As district attorney of San Francisco, she established a hate crimes unit in her office and pushed to end outdated practices which had hampered efforts to bring perpetrators of hate crimes to justice. As Attorney General of California, she made sure that statewide law enforcement was aware of their responsibility to address these crimes and established an annual report so that the public knew the full extent of the problem. And of course, she continued that advocacy as a senator, where she introduced a bill to finally make lynching a hate crime in this country. Of course, we were all very glad to see the president finally sign that bill into law earlier this year. And so it is with great honor and privilege that I would like to introduce a leader who has been a fearless champion against hate, Vice President Kamala Harris.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Brandon, I want to say to you publicly what I said to you privately. Your courage, born out of such a violent tragedy, has been consistent and enduring. Long after the cameras left the scene of that horrific crime, you have used your voice to represent the voices of so many. Consistently, you have been doing this work. You inspire so many of us, and I thank you for your leadership. You are a national leader. Thank you. So, friends and family members of those we lost, civic and community leaders, and members of the clergy, your collective resilience, your compassion, and your commitment to action inspires me, inspires our administration, and inspires our entire nation. So it is a deep honor to be with you today. On this day, 59 years ago, 4 white supremacists planted dynamite in the basement of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The blast took the lives of 4 beautiful little girls and injured over a dozen more people, including Sarah Collins Rudolph, who is with us here today. The bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church was an horrific act of violence meant to instill fear and terror in the people of Birmingham and in the people of our nation, meant to warn them against continuing in the fight for civil rights. Instead, however, people across America of all races, all ages, all backgrounds, joined in response and refused to yield in the face of this injustice. They refused to yield to violence and to hate, as we do now. Less than a year later, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed it into law. Today, America is again looking at and confronting the epidemic of hate-fueled violence. In Oak Creek, Orlando, Victoria, Pittsburgh, El Paso, Atlanta, Buffalo, and in so many other communities. We have seen our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones attacked simply because of who they are or where they pray. In 2020, hate crimes in the United States surged to the highest rate in over a decade. As you have heard, as a former prosecutor, as a former United States Senator, and now as Vice President of the United States, I know the horror and the pain that these attacks cause. Earlier this year, I visited Buffalo to attend the memorial service of Mrs. Ruth Whitfield. And yesterday I returned there to meet again with the families, those families who lost loved ones in that tragedy. During both of my visits to Buffalo, I saw heartbreak and pain. And I also saw incredible determination. The determination to find hope in the midst of despair. The determination to meet darkness with light, to meet division with unity. It is a spirit that is shared by so many in this room. And it is the spirit our nation must summon today. Today, we must rededicate to joining together to help our communities prevent, respond, and recover from acts of hateful violence. And our administration is committed to lead in this effort by investing resources in violence prevention programs to stop these horrific acts, and by strengthening how we support communities after the unimaginable has happened. Earlier this year, after speaking with families in Buffalo, I began working with leaders in our administration to identify ways the federal government can better provide coordinated and on-the-ground support in the wake of these tragedies. Later today, our President will announce our work to develop and strengthen our coordinated federal response to support communities that have been touched, that have been hurt by this violence. As we will discuss during the day, this federal support must be just one piece of a whole of society effort to address hate-fueled violence. I strongly believe no one should ever be made to fight alone. Not on this. We must stand together. Students, parents, educators, faith leaders, business leaders, and law enforcement officials. And we must clearly say that a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. We are at an inflection point in our history, and indeed in our democracy. Years from now, our children and our grandchildren, they're going to ask us, what did you do at that moment? What did you do to help protect our communities, to fight hate-fueled violence, and to build a better nation? Well, I have confidence in what we're going to be able to say. We will tell them, we were all here together today, and we will tell them that in this moment, we stood united. We stood firm in our belief that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. We stood firm in our belief that out of many, we are one. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you.